Unfortunately, while making this video, this channel lost two huge supporters. More importantly, this world lost two wonderful people. Neil Purnell, the grandpa of the namesake of this channel, passed February 25th, 2024. Then on September 16th, 2024, we lost Lauren Smith. I had the honor of serving as best man at her wedding to a very good friend of mine. I'd like to dedicate this video to them. The first thing I needed to do was give this stone a good cleaning. That way, I knew exactly what condition it was in and what would need to be done. Putting the stone together, it was evident the cracks were wide and some pieces were missing. I had the corner and a small piece that come from one of the cracks, but what concerned me the most was the piece I couldn't find. Part of the circle engraving, most of the M, top of the A, and the lower parts of the R and Y weren't there. Also, the crack on the lower part ran right through the aged script. All that would be a challenge. What I had in mind was getting it put back together and just filling the missing pieces with some sort of patching material. Now, patching material won't provide any strength, so I'll need to put some dowels in it. My skill level being what it was, that made me pretty nervous. It wouldn't take much of a mess up to completely ruin this stone. With it being close to 200 years old, there would be no do-overs. Using a square, I marked up where I would drill the holes for the dowels. To make sure it had plenty of time to cure, I went ahead and built a form so I could get the new base poured. I used foam insulation boards cut to the size of the stone to put down in the middle and pour concrete around it. Once the concrete started setting up, I pulled the foam out and had a nice keyway. Now for the part that I dreaded, using a masonry bit to drill holes for the dowels to sit in. I wanted to keep it as few holes in this piece as possible, so I only put in two. I went about ½ an inch deep for each one. It was easy enough to find where the small piece that I found went. It had managed to hold on to its edge after breaking away from the stone. It did a great job of filling up the space in one of the bigger cracks. Using a 2-part epoxy, I gave it a good coat and put it back into place. After checking the fit, it was time to set the dowels. I used 2 pieces of all thread that I cut to the exact size I needed. I made sure to use a lot of epoxy. I definitely wanted them to be in there solid. Once I had the top and middle pieces together, I needed to figure out the best way to patch the hole. I took a piece of wire mesh and cut it to shape. Then I attached it to the dowels. After a lot of looking, I decided to use marble composite patching material from Atlas Preservation. It mixes with water, just like a concrete or a mortar. I wanted it to grab the wire mesh and not run, so I mixed it a little bit on the dry side. You can play around with it a little bit by adding more compound or more water, just to get it exactly how you would like it to be. Once I got it mixed to where I could work with it, I made sure to really press it into the mesh. Going on, this stuff was brown in color. It has a drying time of 72 hours, and you want it to take its time drying, so they suggest you keep it damp. The best thing is once you get it set, cover it with plastic to hold the moisture in while it hardens and dries out over time. When I got enough product on it, I clamped a board on the back, one on the side, and laid it down to form the edges. After the 72-hour drying time, I removed the plastic and was pleased to see how close the color was to the actual stone. It dried good and solid, a little rough, but I had a plan for that. I'd also say keeping it damp while it hardened helped a lot with keeping it from shrinking. A board and light grit sandpaper brought the patchwork to the right size, and it also smoothed it up quite a bit. I needed to make sure the stone was as strong as I could make it. I mixed up some epoxy and filled the crack with as much as I could. I just used epoxy for most of it, and then I mixed some with fine marble sand to fill near the surface and form up the lower part of the R and the Y. It was at this point I was second guessing my plan of just patching the missing piece. I kept looking at the engraving on the stone, a heartbroken husband mourning at the grave of his wife. I thought of how much thought and emotion he must have put into the design of the marker for her final resting place, something I'm sure he thought would last a very long time. I ended up having a change of plans and decided to test my abilities. I was going to try to restore this stone as best I could. So I got out a pencil, yardstick, and Dremel tool and got to work. Another good thing about patching material is it's easy to work with. Just keep the Dremel on low speed so it doesn't get away from you. On the WikiTree site, there's a Mary Smiley Manning, born January 17, 1810, in Dauphin, Pennsylvania. She was the daughter of Patrick and Mary Knox Smiley. She was one of 9 children. November 20th, 1828, in Washington Township in Davies, Indiana, she married Joshua William Manning Jr. Together they had 5 children: Jonathan, Emmanuel, John, Melinda, and Martha. All 7 are listed on the 1850 census of Jefferson County, Illinois, taken in August. The problem is Mary's age is marked 40. So either it's a false age on the census or a false age on the stone. If the stone is correct, that puts her date of birth April 18th, 1820. I'd say they're the same person. It'd be hard to believe 2 women, both named Mary, both married men with the initials J, last name Manning, and both lived in the exact same county in the exact same year. I'm afraid it's a story lost to history. Hopefully you're enjoying this video and the content of this channel as much as I enjoy bringing it to you. I'd like someday for this channel to have enough subscribers and views to be able to cover the cost of materials for what I do. We're not quite there yet, so I invite you to check out this channel store. There are several things to choose from. You've probably seen me wearing some of them. Every purchase provides needed support for materials to keep this channel going. Any bit of help is greatly appreciated. After finishing the front, I mixed up some more epoxy to fill in the crack on the back of the stone. The whole time I was working on the back, I kept thinking about the M. I wasn't very happy with it at all. I ended up completely removing the M and a good portion around it. I then mixed up more patching material and redid the M to what I thought looked a lot closer to the original font used on the stone. When I got done with the Dremel, I used light grit sandpaper just to kind of touch it up and smooth it out. When I was finished with it, I'm glad I decided to redo it. It looked a lot closer. To get the base set was one of the several times I needed some extra muscle on this job. These two young men are two of my nephews. I went ahead and marked out where the grave was. And dug a hole deep enough to where we could put the original base in the bottom. Still have a little bit of room to put gravel and dirt in to level it off for the new base. Once we got it set in and leveled, we made sure to pack in around it good and tight. Later on, I brought my dad in the lower part of the stone to get it set into its new base. I figured it'd be easier to work with the smaller piece, get it set and level, than to try to attach the whole stone and get it out there messing with it. I'm using strong, coarse, historic pointing mortar. After getting some on the bottom and the sides of the keyway, the stone was ready to set in its new home. After the stone was set down in place, I mixed up a little bit more and mixed this a little bit more on the wet side so it would run down and be sure and fill in all the voids. Once I got it filled up around the stone, I struck it off flat. Then I built a couple braces for it to hold its level while it cured out. A few days later, it was time to put the two pieces together. This is the only time and place I feel it's necessary to use a wire wheel on a stone. You want to make sure the two mating surfaces are completely clean and free of debris so you will have good attachment. Once the area was clean, I mixed up a little bit more epoxy. I definitely didn't want to take a chance of dropping or breaking this stone, so I had my youngest son come out with me to help get this stone set in place. This here is probably the first time in 100 years that this stone has been complete and standing in this cemetery. Another good thing about setting and leveling just the bottom part first is that once you get the top clamped to the bottom, the top can't help but be level. After a couple of days of letting the epoxy set up, it was time to go out and fill in the cracks left on the surface. After getting the crack filled, I used a stick to strike off the extra and then go back and make sure that the script was clear of all epoxy. With the patching material being as porous as it is, I definitely wanted to get this sealed up. I used 10X Pro Seal. It should protect from water damage, and it's also UV resistant, so it shouldn't yellow being out in the sun. You definitely want to get a good coat on. When you're putting it on, it's going to darken the stone just a little bit, but once it dries, it'll be completely transparent. Hopefully Joshua is happy with how it turned out, and this is exactly what he had in mind for the lasting monument for his wife, Mary. And now a toast to what I consider a job well done. Thank you for watching.